What happens when a cop with a power complex collides with a woman who outranks him in every way that truly matters? It began on a Wednesday night, just after 11, the kind of hour when Toledo's streets are nearly deserted. The city felt emptied out, except for the occasional worker drifting home, or, on that night, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace driving north after a long meeting 2 hours south. She sat behind the wheel of her government-issued black SUV, its tinted windows unremarkable, the vehicle itself modest and unflashy, much like her own demeanor, quiet, precise, deliberate. The rhythm of the tires hummed low against the pavement as her mind floated halfway home. No speeding, no weaving, nothing unusual, but someone else saw her differently. Sergeant Daniel Mercer sat parked off Reynolds Road, killing time the way he usually did. 15 years on the force had left him with habits carved deep: lukewarm coffee, scrolling through his phone, waiting for something to break the monotony. When the SUV rolled past, something about it stirred his restless instincts. Finally, action. He tossed his coffee aside, flicked on the lights, and rolled out. Adrienne blinked at the sudden explosion of red and blue behind her, the soundless accusation piercing the night. Calmly, deliberately, she slowed and pulled over, her training guiding every move. The slam of the patrol car's door cracked across the silence. She watched in her side mirror as a tall man advanced, hand resting on his holster, flashlight in the other, his posture heavy with authority. He ignored the passenger side, came directly to her window. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation. Adrienne rolled the window halfway down, hands visible on the wheel. Her voice was steady. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped?" The flashlight beam snapped into her face, blinding, invasive. Mercer squinted at her like she was already guilty. "You were drifting between lanes. Didn't signal. Looked like you might have been under the influence." Her brow rose slightly. "I wasn't." His voice hardened. "License and registration." Louder this time. She didn't argue. Slowly, carefully, she reached into the glove box, her movements measured, deliberate, until the documents rested in her hand. As she passed them through the window, her words followed. "That's a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee." His eyes flicked to the ID and a smirk tugged at his mouth. "Military?" "Yes." "Doesn't mean you're above the law." Her reply was calm. "I never said I was." The tension edged higher. "Step out of the vehicle for me." Her eyes locked on him. "Excuse me?" "Step out of the car. I'm conducting a sobriety check." Her jaw tightened, but her tone remained steady. "On what grounds?" "I've complied. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." He leaned closer, authority swelling in his voice. "Now you're refusing a lawful order." Adrienne didn't move. "No, I'm asking for clarification." He didn't like that. He yanked the door open himself. "Out of the vehicle. Now." That was the moment she quietly reached for her phone, tapped the camera on, and set it recording. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. "Just so we're clear, this interaction is being documented." For a brief flicker, his eyes darted to the lens, hesitation cracking his stance. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Out! Now!" Adrienne stepped out, her posture firm but not defiant, her presence radiating discipline even in civilian clothes. She didn't resist, didn't raise her voice. Yet the way she carried herself sent a message stronger than any word. Mercer looked at her more closely now, and for the first time a small voice whispered in the back of his mind, "What am I dealing with here?" But ego drowned it out. He made her walk the line beneath the harsh streetlights, as though she were some reckless drunk. Pulled from a bar fight, her steps were steady, precise. No stumble, no slur, nothing. Still, Mercer scribbled on his pad, tore off a slip, and handed it to her. "Failure to maintain lane." She accepted the ticket without a word, only a look. Then she turned, slid back into her SUV, and drove into the dark. Mercer had no idea that thin piece of paper he'd handed her would soon drag him into a courtroom and unravel everything he thought he knew about power. Sergeant Daniel Mercer wasn't new to any of this. 15 years on the force had carved lines into his face and something sharper into his sense of self. He had been through standoffs, car wrecks, domestic calls that ended in shouting or silence. He carried a reputation, the kind that made rookies straighten up when he walked into a room. Mercer liked it that way. He didn't ask questions, he gave orders. To him, the badge meant control, authority, the final word. Teenagers mouthing off, drivers asking too many questions, people who didn't move fast enough. None of them got leniency. He never backed down. He never apologized. The West Side Precinct knew exactly what they had in him. He was reliable in the paperwork, on time for every shift, never hesitant when a situation turned tense. But they also knew his temper. The way his tone cut sharp, the way he escalated too fast. Still, no one challenged him. Not until that night. When Mercer returned to the station after stopping Adrienne, he barely mentioned it. Logged the citation, wrote the bare-bones report. Failure to maintain lane, possible signs of impairment, no arrest made. He tossed the body cam into the charging dock like it was nothing. The footage sat untouched for 2 days. In the meantime, Mercer laughed about it in the break room. Woman tried to pull rank on me, he told Officer Diaz. Flashed her government ID like it was supposed to mean something. Diaz raised a brow. Military? Mercer shrugged. So she says. Some fed with an attitude. What was her name? Diaz asked. Wallace. Adrienne Wallace. Mercer leaned back in his chair, opened a bag of chips like it was the punchline. Diaz froze. You mean Lieutenant Colonel Wallace? Mercer paused. How would you know that? She gave a lecture at the academy last year. She's not just military, she's high up. Runs logistics out of Fort Wayne. Bronze Star. 2 deployments. She's legit. Mercer scoffed, waved it off. Don't care who she is. On the road, I'm the authority. But the tone in Diaz's voice left something behind. A note of respect. A hint of caution. It chipped faintly at Mercer's armor. Still, he didn't go back to watch the footage. Didn't think twice about the ticket. In his head, the whole thing was done. Buried. Forgotten. But it wasn't. Adrienne filed a complaint the very next morning. Not just with internal affairs. She went straight to the office of the Inspector General. And she wasn't alone. The Sakasi. Footage from her phone was already in her lawyer's hands, already moving quietly through the military chain of command. Mercer had no idea. He went about his routine, barking at people on minor stops, carrying himself like a man untouchable. For years, the system had shielded him. Supervisors had looked away. Union reps had shut down complaints. He believed the rules bent for him in ways they didn't for everyone else. But now he was up against someone who wasn't afraid. Someone who didn't scream, didn't fight, didn't crumble. She documented. She followed protocol. She made one. Phone call at the right time to the right office. And she had proof. Mercer never saw it coming. Not until the envelope landed on his desk, stamped with 2 words he couldn't ignore. Formal inquiry. Adrienne Wallace was not the kind of woman who made noise without cause. 22 years in uniform had taught her restraint. 2 tours overseas had taught her discipline. She had endured enough close calls to know when to speak and when to stay silent. But this time was different. She wasn't thinking just about herself. She thought about every young soldier she had mentored, every civilian she'd seen mistreated without anyone to defend them, every woman, especially every Black woman, forced to swallow her pride just to avoid making things worse. She wasn't doing that anymore. Back at Fort Wayne the morning after, Adrienne sat in her office staring at the screen. Sleep had been thin, not from anger, but from replaying the stop over and over. The way he spoke to her, dismissive, like she was nothing. The way his hand hovered near his holster. The way he tried to bait her into reacting. She knew the script. She knew how fast it could have gone wrong. Even with the camera rolling, she knew how close it had been. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, stepped into the room. "You good, ma'am?" Adrienne looked up, calm but focused. "No, but I'm handling it." He closed the door behind him. "I saw the footage. You want me to loop in the base attorney?" "Already done." Daniels hesitated. "You sure you want to take this public?" Adrienne leaned back. "I'm not looking for headlines. I'm looking for accountability." She meant it. Her rank wasn't just fabric stitched to her shoulder. It was the sum of years spent in service. Decisions that had affected lives. Convoys led through dangerous terrain. Relief missions after hurricanes. Soldiers supplied and secured across 4 continents. Yet none of that had mattered to Mercer. To him, she was just another driver who didn't move fast enough, who dared to ask too many questions. And the thing that aided her wasn't just his treatment. It was how comfortable he had been doing it. Adrienne didn't wait. She gathered the footage, filed the complaint, and attached every detail. No embellishment, no dramatics, just facts, recorded and undeniable. By the end of the week, the story was already circulating in quiet military legal circles. It hadn't touched the press yet, but Mercer's name was now tied to an investigation. The department's legal counsel had been notified. Adrienne kept her head down, kept working, showing up as always, but behind the scenes, she was preparing for more. Her lawyer suggested the stop hadn't just been inappropriate, it might have been a violation of federal policy. If it came to court, they would argue it in front of a judge. Adrienne didn't flinch. She welcomed the fight. Mercer, meanwhile, brushed it all off. He didn't believe it would stick. Not until the envelope arrived. A plain manila folder, his name typed neatly on the front. The return address stamped Lucas County Civil Court. He tore it open in the parking lot, distracted, expecting a summons or a memo. But the words stopped him cold. Notice to appear. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace. Charges: violation of constitutional rights during a traffic stop, unlawful detainment, intimidation, abuse of authority. He stared at the paper for a long moment, then let out a dry laugh. No way. No way this sticks. But when he walked, back inside the station, the air felt different. His captain, Dan Redding, called him into the office, shut the door, pulled the blinds. "We need to talk." Mercer slumped in the chair, arms crossed. "About what? The lady from the other night? She's just trying to play victim." Reading didn't smile. "She's not playing anything. Do you even know who she is?" "I don't care who she is. She got pulled over, acted smug, and now she's mad I didn't kiss her shoes." Reading leaned forward, voice low. "She's not some random motorist. She's a lieutenant colonel, a combat veteran. Her record is spotless. Her connections run deep. And she's got the whole thing on tape. 2 angles, yours and hers." Mercer scoffed. "So what? We just roll over, say sorry because she's got some stripes?" "No. But we don't pretend this is nothing either. You're going to court. And if this gets out, and it will, it's going to explode." Mercer tried to shrug it off, but his jaw tightened. "She didn't get arrested. I didn't touch her. I followed procedure." Reading's eyes stayed fixed on him. "You were on edge, Dan. You escalated. You treated her like a suspect before you even knew who she was." For the first time, Mercer didn't have a quick answer. He bit his lip, silent. The notice said court in 3 weeks. Whispers had already spread through the department. Sideways glances in the hallway. Silence in the locker room. Nobody said it out loud, but Mercer could feel it. He wasn't the wolf anymore. He was bleeding, and the rest of them could smell it. At Fort Wayne, Adrienne was preparing in her own way. No press conferences, no speeches, just quiet meetings with her legal team. reviewing every second of the footage, writing down every detail, calm, collected, relentless. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, looked across the table at her. "You sure you want to do this in court? It'll be public. It'll follow you." Adrienne nodded. "Good. Let it." Most people would have let it go. I've let too much go already. This isn't about me. She wasn't looking for a payout. She wanted a record, something undeniable, something that showed power did, not excuse abuse, and that silence was not the only option. She was standing for more than herself. She was standing for everyone who had been dismissed, talked down to, or bullied behind the shield of a badge. When the court date arrived, Adrienne didn't walk in quietly. She walked in wearing her full dress uniform, the medals, the ribbons, the rank stitched across her chest, clear, undeniable. She wanted the jury to see her, not just as a woman pulled over on a lonely road, but as a human being who had given decades to her country, who respected the law and expected the same in return. Mercer was already seated at the defense table, stiff in a dark suit, face set in a mask. When he looked up and saw her uniform, his smirk faltered for the first time. But the real test hadn't even begun. The courtroom filled with a strange silence. Not reporters, not yet, but officers. From Toledo Precinct, soldiers from Fort Wayne, colleagues dressed in uniform and business attire. They filled the benches shoulder to shoulder with civilians who had come out of curiosity. To some, it was just another traffic stop gone wrong. But Adrienne knew better. To her, it was the boiling point of something that had been simmering for years. When her name was called, Adrienne stood, adjusted her collar, and walked to the witness stand. She moved with the same quiet discipline she had used leading convoys through combat zones. She didn't rush. She didn't falter. Every eye in the room followed her. Her ribbons caught the light. Her posture demanded respect, not because of what she wore, but because of who she was. The judge cleared his throat. "Colonel Wallace, thank you for your service. You may proceed." Delaney Price, her attorney, stepped forward. "Lieutenant Colonel, could you describe the night of January 17th? Adrienne spoke plainly, voice steady. "I was driving back from a meeting at the Indiana Guard Reserve around 11:15 p.m. I was pulled over by Officer Mercer. There was no erratic driving, no signs of intoxication. I was compliant. I asked reasonable questions. He responded with aggression." Her tone never wavered. No edge, no exaggeration. Just the truth. He ordered me out of the vehicle without explanation. When I asked why, he repeated the command louder. At that point, I turned on my phone to record the rest of the stop. Price nodded. "Did you ever refuse a lawful order?" "No." "Did you resist in any way?" "No." "Did you identify yourself?" "Yes. I told him I was a federal employee driving a government vehicle." The courtroom stayed hushed. No coughs, no shifting feet, only the soft scratching of pens on paper as her words filled the air. Then came the playback. First, the phone footage, clear, steady, damning. Then the body cam, Mercer's tone, his posture, his hand hovering near his weapon, the unnecessary field test, the dismissive citation even after she passed perfectly. Every detail, frozen on the screen for the jury to see. Nobody spoke, but everyone felt the shift in the room. Cross-examination came next. Mercer's attorney, Charles Brenner, approached carefully, voice measured, trying to sound respectful while cutting at her testimony. "Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, with all due respect, is it possible Officer Mercer was simply following protocol?" Adrienne didn't blink. "No." "Is it possible he was concerned for your safety or the safety of others?" "I was driving within the lines. I was sober. I was not aggressive. There was no safety concern." "Yet you recorded the stop. Why?" Her eyes held his. Because I've lived long enough to know silence isn't protection. I wanted an accurate record. Brenner shifted, trying, again. So you don't believe officers should have discretion during stops? Adrienne's answer was calm, sharp, unshakable. I believe discretion must be paired with discipline. A badge is not a free pass. It's a responsibility. The line hit hard. Even the judge paused before moving on. Then it was Mercer's turn to face the footage again, this time frame by frame. His clipped tone, his impatience, his hand near his holster when there was no threat. His lawyer tried to hold the line, but the prosecutor's questions cut deeper. Sergeant Mercer, why did you order her out of the vehicle? Mercer stiffened. She looked evasive. Did she disobey any of your commands? She questioned me. Is that illegal? A pause. No. Did she raise her voice? Make threats? No. So what made you escalate the stop? Mercer had no answer. Were you aware she was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army? Not at the time. And if you had known? Mercer hesitated, then his voice dropped. I probably would have handled it differently. The words landed heavy in the silence. Not regret. Just a slip of truth. That night, Mercer hadn't seen a person. He saw someone who didn't move quickly enough, didn't speak the way he liked, didn't submit. Now, sitting across from her with her rank laid bare, the entire courtroom could see it too. 3 days passed before the verdict came down. The courthouse was quieter this time. No uniforms filling the benches, no off-duty officers lining the walls. Just Adrienne, her lawyer, and a few curious civilians who had followed the case. Mercer sat at the defense table with his attorney, hands clasped tight, jaw shifting like he was grinding his teeth without even realizing it. Judge Cynthia Morales shuffled the papers in front of her, then lifted her gaze. In the matter of Wallace versus Mercer, she began, the jury has found in favor of the plaintiff. Mercer shifted in his seat. Adrienne stayed still, her face unreadable. The judge continued, her tone even but heavy with consequence. This court recognizes a violation of constitutional rights during an unlawful stop and detainment. Furthermore, the court finds that the actions taken by Sergeant Mercer were not aligned with department policy or the basic expectations of professional conduct. The room stayed silent. No applause, no gasps, just the weight of accountability filling the air. Mercer's attorney leaned close and whispered, "We'll appeal." But even his voice carried doubt. Judge Morales pressed on. While no criminal charges will be filed at this time, the plaintiff is awarded damages totaling $35,000. This decision will remain on permanent public record and will be forwarded to the Department of Justice as well as the Toledo Police Department for internal review and policy evaluation. Adrienne didn't smile. She didn't raise her fist or show triumph. She simply nodded once, not to the judge, not to the jury, but to herself. She had done what she came to do. Outside, Mercer paced at the bottom of the courthouse steps. A few local reporters had begun to gather. Not a crowd, just enough to catch him lowering his face behind a folder as cameras clicked. He made no statement. He slipped into his car and drove off. Inside, Adrienne checked her phone. A notification blinked. Verdict in your favor. Case closed. Her attorney walked up beside her. You could have asked for more. Adrienne shook her head. It was never about the money. He studied her for a moment. Do you think it'll change anything? She turned toward the glass doors, her voice quiet but firm. I don't know. But maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll think twice. A week later, Mercer was placed on administrative leave while an internal review began. Rumors whispered he might be reassigned, others said it was the beginning of the end. Either way, the shield that had protected him for years was cracked. Everyone could see it. Back at Fort Wayne, Adrienne returned to her duties without fanfare. No interviews, no victory lap. There were soldiers to train, missions to plan, responsibilities to carry. She wasn't interested in being a hero. She wanted the work done. But the message inside her command was clear. You don't always need to raise your voice to demand respect. You don't always need to break to prove you've been wronged. Sometimes the quietest stance speaks the loudest. 2 months later, she stood before a room full of young recruits. Fresh faces, wide eyes, barely weeks in uniform. They expected a lecture on logistics, on combat readiness. Instead, she gave them something else. How many of you think wearing this uniform automatically earns respect? She asked. A few hands rose, some confident, some tentative. She nodded. I understand why you'd think that. But here's the truth. Respect isn't something you're owed. It's something you prove, every day, with every choice. The room stayed still. She let the silence hang before continuing. Power works the same way. A badge, a rank, authority. It isn't a shield, it's a weight. And if you can't carry it with discipline, you don't deserve to carry it at all. One of the new soldiers leaned forward, eyes locked on her. Adrienne paused, then added, When I was stopped by an officer who forgot that truth, I could have yelled. I could have panicked. I could have let it slide. I did none of those things. I documented, I filed, I showed up in court, and I told the truth. She scanned the room, her voice firm. That officer thought his badge made him untouchable, until he saw my rank. Not just on my uniform, but in how I carried myself. That's the difference. That's leadership. The silence deepened, but not from disinterest. It was the silence that comes when something lands, when words carve themselves into memory. Adrienne closed the folder in front of her. Lead with character. Serve with integrity. Remember, you don't just wear the uniform for yourself. You wear it for everyone who came before you, and everyone who will come after. Authority without accountability is just a mask for weakness. Speak up. Stand firm. And when you see wrong, don't turn away, because silence protects the guilty. But courage protects the rest of us. She stepped down from the platform. No applause, no thanks. Just quiet understanding. The work was already done. Thank you for being with me. If this story moved you and you'd like to hear more powerful stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.